Sorry, ma'am. Your credit has been declined.
Are you ready to make the most of the only life you have? To make smart money choices focused on achieving what you care about most? Here to help you balance living well today without sacrificing your tomorrow is the Retirement Answer Man, Roger Whitney.
So, Nicole, have you ever had your identity stolen?
Oh, Roger. Well, I have a couple of times. I've had it stolen when I was first graduating from college, trying to get my own apartment. The guy who I had sent my apartment paperwork to calls me and says, "You've got some collections on your credit report that don't seem to match everything else. Is this yours?" And I was like, no. And of course, I'm 22. I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. And I go look into it, and it turns out that somebody had used my name and information to open utility bills in Houston and then never paid them. So
how long did that take to clean up?
That was a total headache. It's a total headache to try to prove that you're you and that you didn't live somewhere. And then last year, actually, I've had my debit card number stolen before, but that seems to be way easier to deal with.
A year ago, I had a call from a collection agency telling me I'm defaulted on a personal loan for like $500. And the interesting thing was that they won't give you information. They said I opened it up, and I'm like, okay, well, what email address did I use? Well, we can't tell you that, sir. Well, can I see a copy of the paperwork? Oh, no, we can't give that to you. It was like...
Really? That's surprising, because I got like the address of the person and everything. I guess maybe because it was a utility account, not a personal loan.
Maybe, but it's amazing when you get your identity stolen or you have some credit open up, how difficult it is to try to unwind that. And that sort of leads to what we're going to talk about today, which is this Equifax breach, as well as how do you protect yourself without becoming a cybersecurity expert. But we can't do any of that until...
the all-important disclaimer. The most important thing to remember, guys, is don't take advice from Roger on the show.
That is correct, because I don't know anything about you. And so think of this as helpful hints and education. And before you make any decisions, talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor, because that's just common sense. Now, we have a special announcement before we get to that hot topic. Okay, so before we get started with the show, we need a volunteer. We need somebody for Retirement Plan Live. Again, remember, we're doing 2 this year. And this one, we are focused on what you've requested most, or what a lot of listeners have. So here are the requirements. Nicole, who are we looking for?
We are looking for someone who is around age 55 and has less than $1 million in assets and no pension. So if that's you and you're interested in volunteering, go to rogerwhitney.com and send us your information through Ask a Question, and then I'll be in touch with you and we'll set up time for you to talk some more with Roger.
Really excited about this Retirement Plan Live. This is going to be a little bit trickier than normal, and this is what a lot of people wanted, right?
Yeah, that's by request. So we're doing what the people want, right?
All right. Well, now let's get back to that fun stuff of identity theft in the Hot Topic segment. So in the news today, other than the crazy hurricanes, is the Equifax data breach. Now, Nicole, this was a huge deal. A lot more people are probably going to experience what you and I have experienced in going forward. So here's what happened. Hackers infiltrated Equifax's database, or one of the major credit bureaus. And what did they steal?
Basically, well, not everything, but they took people's names, their socials, their addresses. I don't think they actually took the credit information.
Date of births of like 143 million Americans. To put that into perspective, there are about 250 million people in America over age 18. So that's what, roughly 60% of the U.S. adult population could be affected.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
That's a lot of people. Plus, they did, I think it was about 250,000 people actually had credit card numbers taken. So at least that's a much smaller number.
And much easier to fix, I mean, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you call your credit card company and ask to put a freeze on your credit card, way easier than proving you're you.
As you can imagine, Equifax is really dealing with a major response. The CEO is being called to Washington because, of course, the politicians want to have some say in things.
Aye.
But, they've responded a little haphazardly at times, but they seem to be getting better. We had a listener who had been emailing me, Paul, who talked about some of the things that Equifax is doing. Even though they stumbled at first, they're adjusting the PIN for security freezes. They have a call center. They realize that the impact of Hurricane Irma may impact some call waiting time. And they're finally cleaning up their trusted ID program and taking out some liability language that really upset some people and not asking for credit card information. So at least they're taking some good steps. Now, where can people go to find out more about whether they've been affected by the Equifax breach?
Okay. Go to equifaxsecurity2017.com. You will have to enter your information, but it will let you know if you are one of the people affected by the breach.
So let's talk about what this means to you, the listener. So your identity may have been stolen, which means that you might experience something like Nicole and I have, where people are applying for credit without you even realizing it. It's happened to both of us, and it's also happened to a number of people. My partner had a huge identity theft issue. So this is a big mess to clean up. So that's what we're going to talk about in the practical planning segment. Now, here's an interesting thought. This might be a push to start moving away from using your social security number as the basis for your identification and your identity when it comes to credit and lots of things.
What would replace it, do you think?
That's a good question, and I'm not well versed in this, but if you think about this, using numerals as an identifier to your entire life is a little bit antiquated in this very advanced technological society, right? So think of what Apple just did with their announcement of their iPhone. They took away even the fingerprint, which I think it was like 1 in 50,000 chance that somebody else's finger could identify it. And they moved to facial recognition on their new iPhone X, which I am itching to buy and trying to hold myself back from, by the way. But now they're moving to facial recognition, which they...
Wait, is it going to do like a retinal scan, like some spy movie or something? That's so weird.
Well, literally, you hold the phone up to your face and it recognizes your face, whether you're wearing glasses or a hat or other things. I don't know. And supposedly it's like 1 in a million chance that somebody else's face could be.
That's so weird. What about your relatives? I mean,
I don't know. Or your twin sister. My wife is an identical
your wife's a twin. My husband's a twin.
That's right. Yeah. And then what happens with plastic surgery? Would that alter? I guess you'd have to update the facial recognition. But I guess my point is, this may be a push of moving away ultimately from using a social security number, but that's a whole nother topic. But I just thought that was sort of interesting. But for today, because we're always come back today, what can I do today to deal with this? So let's get to that in our practical planning segment. All right, in our practical planning segment, we are going to get real practical on what do we do to protect ourselves without having to become a cybersecurity expert, which I have no interest in becoming. So in 2016, we had an all-time high of data breaches, according to the Identity Theft Resource Center. And during the first half of just this year, 2017, I think the data breaches were up 29% over the same period last year. As of September 5th, 2 days before the Equifax divulged its breach, there were like 975 data breaches this year, exposing about 19.4 million records, according to the ITRC. So think about that. This is how big this Equifax thing was. Prior to the Equifax breach, this year there's about 19.4 million records exposed. And how many was it for Equifax by itself?
168 million, something like that.
Holy cow. So we created a credit action plan, which you can find in the Learning Center at rogerwhitney.com. And we'll include it in next week's 6-Shot Saturday as well. We just updated it as, we've gotten more information. So I'd suggest you go get the updated one so you can act on a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. So before we get into the action plan of really doing big things, let's just talk about some basics, Nicole. What are some basic things that people can do just to protect themselves?
So a lot of these are common sense, and they are things that we've talked about on the podcast before. One would be make sure that you're using a credit card or something like PayPal whenever you're processing online payments. Don't put your bank information online where they're drafting it directly from your bank.
And I think that's a really important one because I always think if someone gets my debit card, they empty my account out, right? And then I have to go get my money back. Whereas if they charge up a credit card, I still have money in my bank, right? The credit card has to actually get the money from me. It just feels more secure.
Well, it seems like on credit cards that they have been pretty good about identifying things that are unusual charges, at least in my experience. I don't know about you.
Oh, definitely. Because, you have the keys to the kingdom. I've gotten, texts and phone calls when you use my credit card to send a gift or to do something online. So yeah, they're really stepping up their game and helping identify trends. And that's one area where I guess big data is good. So what's number 2?
So number 2 would be enable two-step authentication. And if you don't know what that is, that's typically when you would be signing in from like a new device or something like that. They would text you a security code that you would need to enter in order to proceed. So it's something that you can set up. I have it set up on my Gmail. Roger, do you have it set up on?
I have it set up on almost everything.
Everything? Wow.
Yeah. In fact, I just logged into my iMac at home and somehow it had been logged out and it sent me a text and I had to enter the code. It's not perfect, but it's a great It's like just another step to where you just can't randomly log into something because you found a password.
Something else that we've talked about before on the podcast is that you're going to want to use different complex passwords on your accounts. And a great way to sort of manage that is to sign up for 1Password, LastPass, some kind of password manager to keep track of all of it for you.
Yeah, none of those are perfect, but they're a heck of a lot better than a notebook or an Excel spreadsheet that is open to everybody. So what exactly is a complex password?
Numbers, letters, special characters, doesn't contain your name or your dog's name.
Yeah, things that just don't make sense, right? So imagine, I think we had a representative from 1Password on the show of how many different things you log into. Ideally, everyone should have a separate password that sometimes can be 15 characters long of things that's gobbledygook. So I don't know how you do that without a password manager. All right, so let's move on. What's the next one?
Password protect your smartphone and your computer. That one's pretty common sense.
Yeah, when I get the iPhone X, it'll be my face. My face will be my password.
Wait, so how will it know it's your actual face? Like, what if I hold it up to a picture of your face?
That is a good question. I don't know. And you notice how I did that.
Now you have to get one so that we can test it and then report back.
That I was just saying, I told myself I would not get it, but you know what? I will have to get one just for the audience to test
That's
it.
right. You make the sacrifice, Roger. It's important.
Okay. But you want to make sure you have passwords on your computers and your smartphone. So if someone grabs it, they don't know how to get into it. And then the last one actually is a really big one. So let's talk about that one.
Be careful using public Wi-Fi, guys. And we've talked about this before too. Cloak, is that the one that you use?
Yeah, I use Cloak, and there are a couple that create these virtual private networks that, they're not perfect again, but they shield you from someone seeing your computer. So what's the problem with a public Wi-Fi, like at the airport or Starbucks, your favorite place? What's the problem?
It's pumpkin spice season. The problem is that thieves can intercept your information. You don't know who else is using the network and who might be able to access your computer when you're on it.
Literally, I've sat in a Starbucks, and when I go to sign on to my Wi-Fi, I can see other people's computers in the same store. And if I was a hacker and had any skills, I could probably go look at their music and look at files if I knew what I was doing. So yeah, that's a real big danger. So you want to be careful there. So those are the basics. That's like locking your door at night and having lights outside, motion detector. Those are just the basics.
Remembering to close the garage.
Yeah, you didn't close the garage this week.
I didn't this week. You guys, my husband was out of town. I messed up.
Now you know.
Yes.
All right, so those are the basics. So let's get into some details of what we can do in response to this big data breach at Equifax. So, the step 2, which we use as part of our retirement standard of care with clients to make sure that this starts to happen, is what?
You need to order a copy of your credit report annually. So you get a free one annually, and you'll need to order a copy from all 3 credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion.
And then we have phone numbers for all of those. And then there's also a website called annualcreditreport.com that is supported by all 3, where you can just do it all in one place. So that's going to be, after you do the basics, you want to at least review your credit report for potential threats once a year because you get it annually. So step 2 is consider setting up a fraud alert. Now, generally, this is only done if you really feel you've been the victim of identity theft. Basically, what a fraud alert is going to do is it's going to require any company to verify your identity when opening up an account in your name. So it makes them do an extra step beyond just filling out an application or entering some information when they're at a Kohl's or some other retail store. Now, here's the problem, or the difficulty with this is you got to contact each credit bureau. So that can be a pain. You know, they have big bureaucracies and you're calling an 800 number and then they only last 90 days. So every 90 days you would have to renew a fraud alert. So that can be a little bit of a pain. So this may be a step that if you're really worried about it, you want to do, but it may not be an essential step to do.
I could be remembering this wrong. Somehow when I had mine stolen, I put a fraud alert on mine that was 7 years long. And I don't know if that was because I actually had mine stolen that they were able to do that, or...
I don't know. From the research I've done, it doesn't look like you can do it that long. So I don't know.
I'll have to follow up on that one.
Yeah, follow up on that one. Number 4 is probably the most effective from all the research that I've done, which is freezing your credit. So, I mean, this is like putting your credit reports on ice. So what exactly is freezing the credit, Nicole?
So this would actually be, you have to call, and I think you have to pay, correct? You have to pay $5?
I have no idea, but you call them and
I saw that in the comments from some listeners. But yes, so you'd have to call and you'd have to implement the credit freeze, and then it generates a PIN number that only you know, correct? And then if you applied for credit, you would have to provide the PIN number.
Right. And it still allows current lenders to access your credit report and things that you have in place right now. But if you're going to apply for credit, maybe if you're applying for a new apartment, a lot of times they will check your credit.
Mortgage.
You're going to have to actively go, quote unquote, thaw your credit report to allow that vendor to access it for whatever purpose they need. So it can be a little bit of a pain if you are applying for credit, but it will definitely lock down your credit where it's frozen until you decide to thaw it. And on the credit action plan, just so you know, we have links to the Federal Trade Commission that has the page that talks about a credit freeze, the page that talks about a fraud alert, and they have actually a really good website. You know, good job, government, on what they do and what they don't do and how to impact it. They have checklists available, which are available in the credit action plan in the Learning Center. And then step 5 is to consider a credit monitoring program. So what do they do?
So credit monitoring programs actually alert you if there's unusual activity on your credit report.
Yeah, and they do things like, you know, scan the world for the use of your Social Security number and just weird things. Like, you know, there are a bunch of them, and we have links to a bunch of different ones in the report. And they cost money, don't they?
They do. They cost money. And I think there are ones that are offered by each credit bureau. And then there's some that are offered that kind of, with all 3, I guess, is kind of an independent service.
Yeah, and we have a link to a lot of them in the action plan. Now, Trusted ID, which is Equifax's service, normally I think it's like $18, $19 a month. They are offering it for at least 1 year for free, and they're not asking for your credit card. So that might be the easy way. I know we feel bad about Equifax right now, but it could literally happen to anybody. So you can get it free for at least a year using the Equifax program, and you don't have to give your credit card number, which they just changed, so you don't have to worry about canceling it or getting charged. And then step 6 is we got to remain vigilant. So think about this. The information they use, Nicole, on those utility bills, that information is still out there, right? So this 100+ million people that have their date of birth, their Social Security number, their driver's license information, etc. That information doesn't just disappear. It is out there forever. That's a big deal. So right now, this is like all the uproar about this, but remaining vigilant on this is going to be even more important because it's never going to go away.
Right. It'd probably be even more important in a year or two to make sure that nothing has happened with the information.
Yeah, as all the excitement about it dies down.
Right.
So until we get to facial recognition, retina scanning, or whatever, we're going to need to remain vigilant. That's why we've added reviewing credit reports with clients to our retirement standard of care to do annually so we can try to remain vigilant. And the last one is one we don't think about, which just multiplies the problem. And which one is that?
Repeat this process for your loved ones. And actually, I mean, it makes total sense because when I was 22 and this happened to me, I didn't know anything about pulling my credit report or what I needed to look for, any of that kind of stuff. So this would be a perfect time for you to teach your kids about pulling their credit report, Roger.
Yeah, I'm thinking of my 20 and 21-year-old and saying, okay, Spencer, Emma, let's go through all these steps.
Family bonding time.
Yeah, so I have ×4 for me on some of these. So that's where these action steps. I'm not suggesting you take every one of these steps, but doing the basics and picking the one that makes the most sense for you, given your activity, given how vigilant you want to be. But I think if you just do the basics and then get your credit report once a year and pay attention to your accounts, that's probably going to get you, almost to the goal line of being cyber smart, I guess. So you can go to the Learning Center at rogerwhitney.com and get a copy of the Credit Breach Action Plan. And then we will have a link to it again in 6-Shot Saturday. So if you're signed up for that, we'll send you the latest version this coming Saturday. Now that we've dealt with that happy topic, let's get to a real happy topic in the Happy Lab. Hey, welcome to the Happy Lab, where we noodle on what? How to be happy. So I watched the Apple presentation of all the cool new products. We got a cool Apple Watch that could actually be a cell phone. We have the new iPhone X with facial recognition. And I'm going to admit it, I had it on while I was working, and I got excited.
Your happiness went to 11.
My happiness went to 11 of how cool the new is. But that's such a fallacy, right? You get it, and as soon as you get it, it loses its newness and its excitement. Then it's just this material thing. In this case, the material thing, the iPhone X, cost $1,000.
It does?
It does. And it's very easy to respond to it. When I was watching it, I'm like, oh, dude, I need that. That's what I was thinking in my head. And I was getting excited. And if we want to create a great life, it's important that we control those happiness urges that are related to things because they go away, right? I have much more fun spending zero money riding my mountain bike like I did yesterday. And I can do that for free once I buy my bike, right? It doesn't have to be a fancy bike.
Right.
And this is something we need to be constantly vigilant about because the world, and we've talked about this before, the world is designed to create these responses. They know what they're doing. So it's something that we have to constantly be vigilant about. I always say, I never want anything unless I'm in a store. There's nothing I really need unless I'm in a department store. And I'm like, oh, I need that. I need that. But if I'm not there, I don't need it. And I'm still happy. So I guess that's my Happy Lab message for today.
That's a good one.
On your marks, get set.
Hey, welcome to the Smart Sprint segment where we set a 7-day goal to take a little baby step to creating a great life. I'm only going to ask you to do 2 things, and one's relatively easy, and the second one might be a little harder. One, go to the Learning Center at rogerwhitney.com and download the free Credit Breach Action Plan, where we outline everything we talked about in the show. And then number 2, just focus on doing the basics right now. Just focus on making yourself protected by taking care of the simple things that we talked about in the basics. So that's your action plan for the next 7 days. Now go. I don't want to forget to thank some listeners, Deb, Paul, Dan, and Russell, who were very helpful in sending me some information and correcting some things on my part on dealing with this data breach. So it's a big benefit to have really cool listeners that are trying to be part of the solution and help other people. So that's really cool.
Great job, guys. As a reminder, Roger is a fee-only advisor, and we do work with clients over the age of 50 to help them create awesome retirements. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, check out our website, rogerwhitney.com, click on Work With Us, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Until next week, this is Roger Whitney, the Retirement Answer Man, in my radio voice.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.
So how do you feel on your second to last show, Nicole?
My second to last show?
Oh, wait, I guess it's your second show. Oh, did I telegraph something?
Oh my God, I'm getting fired. No.
I think the first thing you said was, am I really that loud? After you listened to it.
That's true. And I guess maybe I am really loud. I think my younger son is really loud. So maybe he got it from me. Who knows?
You never know. And I can't believe your credit got stolen so young. You didn't even have a credit score when you were 22, likely.
Oh my God. Well, no, I did, because actually my dad made me open a credit card my freshman year of college to establish credit. So thanks, Dad, for that. But also maybe no thanks. I don't know.
I remember when I got my first credit card, it was in my sophomore year of college. And my parents were horrible about talking to me about money. And I was really bad with money. And what I remember was I bought snow skis with my credit card.
Oh, because you lived in Michigan. I was like, why did you need skis in
Yes,
Texas? But
I lived in Michigan. And they never actually charged the card. And because I was a sophomore in college and I was not fully developed, I never told anybody.
Roger.
I know. I feel
That's so bad.
I know. But, I'm not proud of that, but I felt like I got away with something at the time when you're 20 years old. I'm not proud of that. Maybe, see, I'm not perfect. You know that already.
Well, yeah, you just accidentally almost fired me. So clearly you're not perfect.
Yeah, because only a perfect person would, a perfect person would never fire Nicole. But this credit stuff is a big issue. So
it is a big issue. You know what's so funny? Did I tell you that last year when my debit card number got stolen, they spent $400 on LinkedIn?
What?
On LinkedIn. I'm like, what on earth? If you're going to steal my information, at least buy something cool.
Well, maybe they were just looking for a job and they really needed some market. I don't know.
What do you even get on LinkedIn for that much? I don't know.
I have no idea.